Call the meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're all in a really good mood because it's raining outside and we're finally getting moisture. Go ahead and start off with a motion to approve the agenda as presented. May I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to considering the acceptance of staff resignations. So these will be accepting the resignations submitted by THS math teacher, Mr. Hansen, and THS school counselor, Ms. Schnazi. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting these resignations, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is consider approval of offering a teaching contract for the 25-26 school year to Mr. Holquist as a math teacher at Southeast Junior Senior High School pending Wyoming teacher certification. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of offering a teaching contract to Mr. Holquist as a math teacher at Southeast Junior and Senior High, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. All right, and with that, we will adjourn our special meeting and move into the work session. Ms. Cates?
Thank you. Members of the board, do you mind if I just facilitate from here? The podium's not there and it's easier for me if it works for you all.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I'm here today to give you kind of a review and rundown in preparation for Friday night's Salva Relations meeting. Please understand that I'm going to talk through some projections, and today is March 31st. We have 3 more months before the fiscal year is completed. So I've done my projections, and you know, there could still be a few changes, but typically it's pretty accurate. This document here, it's important for you to see what fiscal year 25 looks like when we finish the year. And for whatever reason, it's cutting off the very bottom. I'll just kind of share with you. Pete, do you have a suggestion as to why it's cutting off the bottom? Is there anything we can do? The revenue that I'm showing for you, and I've shared with some of you and talked through, our revenue came in higher than what it was budgeted, which is a good thing. The two outliers that caused that, there was a difference in the guarantee received from the state, by the amount of $500,000. That's the very top foundation guarantee line. And then we did have the insurance proceeds that we dealt with. Some of you may not be aware, we had the fire at the Southeast Ag Shop. And it was delayed in getting those proceeds to the district. And then when it was all settled, it ended up being $300,000 more than what I thought final settlement would be. So there's our increase in revenue. When we look at expenditures, and is there anything we can do to get the bottom? Yeah.
I would stop share now. And then I go to your Excel sheet. Do you have it up?
Um,
Do you not want the sheet up?
well, I'm gonna need to, I can do it.
Up to another tab. To another tab.
Thank you.
No, yeah.
I should do. Well. Here we go. No, shoot. You know what? Let's do this. Page layout. I'll save it to a PDF. Oh. Let's see where we're actually at the bottom as far as revenues minus expenditures. It was a unique year, and the uniqueness of the year was the grant funding that we dealt with and that we worked through this year. There were a number of positions that were budgeted and or not filled, or that were moved into various grant funding in order to preserve general fund dollars. So when you look at the base salaries, they're at the top. The left side is the budget for fiscal year 25. The right side is the projected completion of fiscal year 25. There's about $400,000 in positions that were budgeted that weren't filled. There was an interventionist at TMS that was moved to the LIT grant. There was a special ed position shared between Lingle and Southeast that was posted and not able to be filled. There was a mid-hire resignation, mid-year resignation that wasn't able to be filled. And then 2 counselors that we received mental health grant money mid-year. We were able to move half of each of those over into the grant funding and preserve those general fund dollars. And then we had special ed pairs and custodians on classified side that were delayed in getting those positions hired. All of that together generates dollars and what looks like a reduction between actual and budget. Temporary salaries, that really is a function of people getting in and filling positions. But some of the other things that I want to point out to you, large outliers, is the health insurance cost. You look there, we have another significant savings in that we had dollars budgeted for people to take health insurance. And for whatever reason, people in positions chose not to take health insurance or were taking it at a different level than what it was budgeted. So there was a significant savings there. There was a cost, food service. We had $350,000 budgeted in order to sustain the community eligibility provision of the food service program. It appears to be more like 450,000, and that's a function of additional food costs than when we first went into the program, as well as a large increase in production. The number of meals is astronomical, in my opinion, in that we had 196,600 meals served through March. And then last year we had 136,000 meals. That's an increase of 60,000 meals. Think about students can take one breakfast, one lunch, so that could be being fed in prior years. To the effect of we spend the money this year, we receive the money next year. Our out-of-district placement increased or appears to be increasing by double. 250,000 was budgeted and spending 504,000. Technology, we do have additional expenses that just kind of comes with the nature of it. When you get down here to the bottom, revenue minus the expenditures, and some of it is carryover from is insurance, the in funds received from the state, and then those dollars. What I also show for you is the percent of that, and we can retain up to 20%. Excuse me. We can retain up to 30% in our carryover. 28. It used to be 15%. So the carryover is our savings account. It keeps us whole. I think I can go back. Nope. Shoot.
18.
Okay. I really apologize too. I have done this presentation before. I would think I had never used a computer. When we look at the history of carryover, this is the money that the state allows districts to retain based upon the guarantee that they receive from the state. The amount that we could carry over was 15% up until fiscal year 21. So if you look these years prior, there was a point in time when the district nearly had no money or no carryover. We got it to 19.5, and what I just shared with you, we were looking at 20.95 when we end this year at the present time. What you need to be aware, and I kind of talked through some of this with the E-rate purchase last week. We have what we call pre-97 money, which is in column C. Those are dollars that the district held in 1997 when the foundation model was totally redesigned. The money that the district had at that point in time was earmarked, and it was such that if we needed to spend it, so if we got into a position to where we had no money and we were spending down into that $775,000 bucket, that was money that couldn't be replenished. But if we didn't spend it, it just continued to be there for us. And then we have the contingency, which is the money that we can carry up to 30%. So we have the two added together, which puts us at 6.5%. What I think is really important, and I wish I could go up to the prior slide, but if you think about our out-of-district placement, we had 250,000 budgeted, we had 500,000 projected to be expended. That 250,000, if we were getting into a position, we could use carryover for this year and then receive those funds the following year. That way we're not tying that up into our budget and not having those funds available for salary relations when we meet Friday night. So that's one of the reasons why we have the carryover available to us. Another one is if we were a large mineral district, which we are not, but a large mineral district goes through abatements and mineral companies that come and go with their tax assessments, and they could run into an issue where they didn't actually receive the funds that they were projecting and need that money to carry them over into the next year. I'm going to bounce back into the PowerPoint. As I do that, do you guys have any questions leading up to what I've shared with you thus far?
So far, it sounds like all good news.
You know what? This, as I was putting it together, this to me is a very good good year. Yes.
Is there any discussion on extending that carryover limit past me?
Well, it's 30%. And there is
It goes through 2028, right?
Right.
Has there been any discussion on continuing that increase?
There was legislation this year that took it to 2028. So what yep, they extended it 2 more years. We're trying to get it permanently placed as business managers. But right now, I think they'll wait till recalibration and see if it can be incorporated into recalibration.
I personally think 20% is where it should be permanently. The prior is 15%. coming from a state that had an unlimited, unfortunately, districts would get into a situation where their percentages they were becoming a bank. It's not the job of the school district to be a bank. Your job is to expend the dollars and hold appropriately amounts in carryover to sustain yourself in difficult times. Outside of that, you should not be building upon carryover, in my opinion. And so I think 20% is an appropriate amount and could be sustained. I think when you start looking at 30%, and I would be advocating on the fact of Goshen County. I think that is more than enough to be at 20%. In some districts, I could see where there are situations to where if they had a lower number in their budget, you are starting to get a little concerned in some of those with just over 20%. We've talked about what is that perfect area. Marcy and I have gone around, what a perfect budget looks for me to start is around between 10 and 13. 10 is my bottom. 13 is an appropriate amount between, and I can live anywhere within there and be very comfortable, in my opinion.
But now, if you're sitting on a pile of money that exceeds your target, your only option is you gotta spend it.
Correct. So let's say in a hypothetical situation, we were at 32% projected for this next year. If our budget going into the following year that Marcy would lay out would be above that margin, we would be sending those dollars back to the state. And so that was the same when it was set at 15. We did have to be cognizant of what that budget looked like and where we were appropriately spending funds. Now, Marcy, I'll kind of get in a little bit more detail because that 20% can be a little deceiving on where we're end up. And she'll talk about that here shortly.
So when we talk about funding, and I'm going to share with you in the preliminary budget, we have an ECA, which is an external cost adjustment, and that's provided by the legislature. They provided and if you walked through the legislative session, there was an ECA in the initial supplemental budget. And when the supplemental budget was not approved, it then went into the recalibration bill. The ECA put in the recalibration bill was the initial ECA, which actually ended up better than what was in the supplemental budget. It was 8.5% for labor, 8.5% for non-professional labor, a reduction of 6.285% for energy, and an increase of 1.067% for educational materials. The separation between professional and non-professional is the differentiation between certified staff and non-certified staff. So certified versus classified. Energy is our utilities expense. And the difficult piece for that is that our utilities keep going up. However, there's this assumption that we could afford a reduction to that. So that net effect is $1.297 million. The ECA was very important for Goshen County. The other positive that we saw this year is, as Mr. Kramer has alluded to, each month our ADM is going down. Our ADM looks to decrease 23 students to an actual number of 1,580 students, ADM being average daily membership. The positive is that our ADM is based on the greater of our actual or a 3-year average. Our 3-year average looks to be equal to last year's actual. Consequently, there's no change for this year, which again is a plus. Transportation and special ed remained at 100%. Transportation is part of the foundation guarantee, and our expenditures look to exceed last year's expenditures by $121,000. Special ed rides out there on its own. It is reimbursed separately. And those expenditures are looking to increase $630,000. The piece to be aware of in both cases is that we increased our base quite a bit last year. So our salary dollars go up, both certified and classified. And then our out-of-district placement has gone up drastically. Those being kind of our two big outliers. There is a Wyoming retirement system contribution, which remained unchanged. Our health insurance funding in the model is very deceiving in that health insurance is tied to the state plan, of which we don't participate in. However, the assumption is that the premiums for the state plan have not increased. Thus, there's no increase or decrease in the model for funding for health insurance. And then we've talked about cash reserves and the fact that the allowable stayed at a level of 30%. So the other piece that I want to speak to, and that being on this slide, the foundation guarantee. I'm sure everyone has heard the conversations and the 25% reduction that was passed on to reduce property taxes. The foundation guarantee are dollars that the legislature has set aside for education, for K through 12 public education. Thus, we see what was illustrated as a backfill. So even though property taxes are seeing a decrease and people locally would be paying less in their property taxes, the state makes up that difference in what has been determined as a guarantee. There's both a guarantee and an entitlement. A guarantee is the dollar amount in whole, that being the entitlement plus those local resources, and local resources being what the mill levies generate. And we, in July, pass those levies that the district is going to see, primarily 32.5% mill. So the foundation guarantee is showing an increase, that increase being the ECA that I spoke of. Special ed reimbursement going up. Non-local resources are those things such as attendance or not attendance, gate receipts, facility usage, those types of things are non-local in nature. And then the retirement reimbursement, we do receive 2.25%. It's categorical. So based upon the salaries that we pay coming out of the general fund, we do receive at our request 2.25% of that. The amount in total may look like not very much as far as an increase based upon where we look to finish the year. However, we have to notice that those insurance proceeds are no longer evident in fiscal year 26. We also don't have the insurance payments, so the two are a wash. Oh, good. And this slide is, I think you can pretty much see this slide. So when we walk through the revenues, I just showed those to you comparing the 2 years. Salaries, we do see some changes. We have an additional, some additional positions, and then we have some reductions. There's an additional SLP added into the base salary dollars, but we also have a reduction in speech contract services down below. There's a reduction of a half business teacher district-wide, and there's a reduction of an elementary teacher due to attrition district-wide. So in total, we're relatively close to where we look to finish the year at. The other changes that appear to be somewhat significant, if you look at workers' comp, last year there was legislation passed that reduced the workers' comp rates by 50%. So our workers' comp is going from 2.25 to 1.17%. That's not big dollars, but we're going from 191,000 to 99,000. Retirement is a function of 14.87% of the base salaries. But there again, health insurance, that's based upon the positions and the people anticipated to be in those positions. The $450,000 transfer to food service, that is included, assuming that we are a CEP district again next year. And then going down, for the most part, the preliminary budget is a function of where we ended this year, with a couple of exceptions. Utilities does have a 10% increase. That's simply based upon the nature of utilities. Transportation has a slight increase for fuel and diesel. Non-reimbursable transportation, there again, that's primarily a function of maintaining the fleet as well as fuel charges. Out of district placement, we're keeping that at 500,000. I mentioned the contract services for speech. If we add a speech language pathologist, we can decrease what we actually pay in contract services. And then the property liability and insurance, that is projected at 20%. Our insurance coverage is very unique and very difficult in that we're part of school risk retention. That is a pool of school districts. But the premiums, like many other places, are backward looking at utilization. And we do have some hail claims in the past, and then we have that fire that I alluded to. So if we were out trying to shop insurance just on the market, we probably would be uninsurable. The couple other categories that did see some increases, central administration, we're projecting an increase in the SRO costs. The business line item, we went the last 6 months without a copier lease. We just had the copiers. It was a dollar buyout, but we do have an RFP issued for new copiers. And then the very bottom, insurance expenditures. We hope we don't have any insurance payments that we're making. So revenues minus expenditures, we look to be at a positive $1.1 million for a carryover percentage of 24.16%.
Where does it sit? We earn interest on it, in cash, or where is it?
The pre-$97 is sitting in our checking account, and we are earning interest. That when I look at the non-local, interest is another one of the items in that category, and we are earning what I consider decent interest without being in a non-FDIC insured product. Are there other questions before I get into my last slide of some options? That's an excellent question. And if you look here at the top where you see the foundation guarantee, that foundation guarantee is based upon the average daily membership of our population, the square footage of our buildings, as well as our transportation reimbursement being part of that. So we incur those funds this year, we receive them next year. The foundation guarantee, we receive that in 10 installments from August to May. And then the special education line item, 2 years ago, the legislature deemed it necessary to be able to specifically show the special ed monies going to the district. So that comes in a separate deposit. That's also 10 payments, but that will come next year based upon this year's expenditures. Okay. So this last slide that I share with you, this is simply in preparation for Friday and salary relations. And what we have here is some costs. These costs have not been committed. They simply are options that it gives you an idea if some of these items were to be recommended, what the district's cash position would be based upon any of these items. What would happen and what will happen is that salary relations will make a recommendation Friday night. And then that recommendation will be included in next Tuesday's board packet for this board to make a decision based upon that recommendation from salary relations. That steps and lanes are the two items that always get talked about first. Statutorily, it is important that we do give employees their steps or their year of experience until they reach the bottom line 20. So that's at a cost of 184,000. Lanes are based upon certified people gaining education and moving them over onto various different lanes. I think I have volume now.
That's double up.
That's a good idea. There we go. So then the conversation about increased base. Certified base is and I see a little typo, finger fumble. 1% increase to base is $552. It's not 5,552. Yes. When you put the base to $55,752. Base presently is $55,200. 1% increase that flows across certified admin. That's cost of $125,348. A 1% increase to base on the classified schedule would take it to $16.85. It's currently $16.68. That's a cost of $39,920. Holly shared last month, I believe, in saying with 7%. And there's 3 English language arts instructional coaches that I have priced out the cost of sustaining those 6 individuals in 2 different line items. To be 120,000 for English language arts coaches, 249,000, and that's are 1.2 million. By 1,173,000, which is our revenues less our expense, and the $56,800 minus $56,800 is from balancing our budget. We have our carryover that I mentioned on like the second slide. So that 56 that we have, which change our carryover to 19.8%. Mr. Kramer, do you have comments?
No, I just really appreciate everybody's work in the district because as a result of the hard work since September and the realization of the literacy grant not being renewed, as Marcy illustrated, the cost savings that were generated throughout the year. So that included everybody watching the bottom line extremely closely. And you really kind of have estimates and you think you're getting closer. And when Marcy was continuing to put the numbers, and then we had our meeting this morning, really solidifying how significant of an increase that we were able to generate in that carryover to sustain this year. And look where we're able to sustain or entertain the possibility of sustaining those positions that were grant funded and still then remain very fiscally responsible in a situation where we are not dramatically dipping into our carryover. And it does, with this budget, it does include some reductions also. That this isn't without some reduction in the district. Not everything is remaining as is. And will be further discussed as we go into a pre-budget time in which the board would be approving this, and also will be a topic for salary relations on Friday. So there are some costs that we will take a look at on Friday that could shift that 19% that we're looking at, whether it be maintaining some of the things that we're looking at reducing or changing from, I mean, what we can typically go back to, and I should have had it up earlier. Give me one moment. Because this is very good numbers.
While Mr. Kramer's pulling that up, I would share with you, for instance, that percentage if contributions stay where they are, but privately employees are paying 12%, the district's paying 88%. So if that's the recommendation that's chosen, that 374,000 can be adjusted. That this really is a hypothetical, and it's a starting point that in the years that I've done this, people like to see what these costs are, that then they can be altered and adjusted and worked with.
The other thing to point out, individuals would still be, as I referenced, That's correct. I'll let you answer more specifically to that.
Statutorily, we are to fund steps in the state of Wyoming. So it's pretty important that if we don't fund those steps this year, then in the future years, we would have to go back and do the research and fund those steps.
I think Trustee Goulier is that number accurate for what we'd estimate for employees?
Oh,
correct?
yes,
Is-
yes,
For the number of steps may change. We're anticipating.
yes.
Did I understand that correctly? Okay, you bet.
I thought the question was focusing on more the need to facilitate those two line items.
And they need to notify, what is the date they need to notify us of lane changes in regards to that estimate?
Before March 1st.
So we have received any requests for lane changes already. That's where Marcy bases that information on for the accuracy there. That is just the cost for every 1% increase on the base. That we want to increase it, let's say 2.2 or 1.3, we would.
So if I hit on that. Or anything like that. Because it's a big meeting on Friday and
I mean, when you look at the first page, either 19.86 or 20.4, whatever that was, they're really close to be the highest percentage of carryover in 20 years. So I mean, just scope of that, when you throw that into a conversation, I mean, then you just have to realize where that was at.
Well, and I think it's important to talk about the carryover, but it also is important to recognize when we did this last year, we talked a lot about the insurance proceeds. And we're working on the assumption of how much we were going to be receiving and hoping we were going to have it by the end of last fiscal year. But that pushing into this year, it all kind of inflates the picture, if you will. So I make sure that everybody understands that there's $1.5 million in FY25 that really should have been part of FY24. Mm-hmm. Right. Probably, yeah. Yeah. It's about 250,000 is 1%. So yeah.
And so that's another thing to illustrate. Those percentages go down rather quickly. When we start taking a look, you think about those numbers and you look from that 16 to 20, and then you start costing some of these out. It's very, very easy to get up into a neighborhood of $500,000 for expenditures, just like that, where you think, boy, that doesn't seem like it's going to cost that much. And then when you turn around, wow, that 1% on the base. And also the other thing to remember is we do have declining enrollment. The average is saving us right now over the 3 years. At some point in time, it is going to be in a situation where consistency is always the best practice. I always appreciate continuous upward improvement as opposed to very high peaks or valleys when we can come in and say, yep, lanes, steps, consistent percentages, staying with inflation. as opposed to we're gonna really go after it this year, but then the following year, we have a declining enrollment. Because we also don't know what some of the new legislation is going to affect in regard.
I want to go back to this carryover, and I think on the past, I 10 to 13%. But I also alluded to the fact that the legislature last year pulled out the special ed funding and they wanted to see it as a separate line item. If you look at this foundation entitlement column, you can see in FY24, we were 29 million in FY22 and we went to 26 or 23, we were 29 million, 24, we were 26 million. 26 million pulled out special ed reimbursement. And in pulling out the special ed reimbursement, it makes our percent of carryover look higher because we're carrying over a similar amount, but the bottom divisor is a smaller amount. So, we have the legislature back there kind of manipulating things, because if we were working with a 20% instead of 30%, we would be up against, we got to hurry up and spend a little bit of money here. So when we talked to 10% 3 to 4 years ago, that was a greater dollar amount than talking 10% now. I'm not saying 10% is a bad number, but I just want everybody to understand that in past years, we were comparing that to a foundation guarantee that included a special ed reimbursement. And now that special ed reimbursement is sitting alone and it's not part of our. So it doesn't affect our financial position, but it affects how the state looks at our percent of carryover. Confuses it a little bit more. That is one philosophy, yes. I do appreciate you bearing with me. My technology tonight wasn't at the top of my game.